Good evening. Welcome to the City of Colwood Planning and Land Use Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. We'd first like to acknowledge with respect that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Kasepsum nations. I'd like to call this meeting to order and seek approval of the agenda. The recommendation is that the agenda of the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting of September 3rd, 2024 be adopted as present. Do I have a mover? Thank you, James. Adoption of minutes. 3.1 Special Planning and Land Use Committee meeting minutes for June 25th, 2024. The recommendation is that the minutes of the Special Planning and Land Use Committee meeting held June 25th, 2024 be adopted as presented. Do I have a mover to adopt those minutes? Thank you. I'm not sure who went first, whether it was Katrina or Councillor Jansen. Public participation, seeing none, we will move on to item 5, new business, where the only member in the audience this evening is Daniel Lake, planning technician, to provide updates to the development application consultation policy DEV 001. Take it away, Daniel.
Good evening, committee members. Hope you're all doing well tonight. Yeah, so today I will be discussing updates to development application consultation policy, DEV 001. This comes from a March 25th council resolution that directed staff to do a review of this policy, specifically the 75-meter notification distance for rezonings. And so when we get a rezoning application, currently we send postcards to neighboring properties within a 75-meter distance, informing them of the proposal. So a little bit about the development application consultation policy. So this policy is kind of a high-level guide for property owners or their agents regarding land use and development. The policy includes information regarding pre-application processes, posting of signs, and of course, public notification. In the policy, it is prescribed that there's a 75-meter notification distance for rezoning applications. And this 75-meter notification distance is based on our land use application procedures bylaw. And so Local Government Act requires that municipalities mail or deliver public notices when they are required, depending on the type of application. And the distance for that mail out is prescribed by a bylaw. In our case, that's the land use application procedures bylaw. And that's not only the distance for rezonings, it's for all types of applications that require public notice. So that's our development variance permits, temporary use permits, anything that would require a public hearing, like an OCP amendment, so on and so forth. And so looking at the different rezoning notifications across the region to kind of get an idea of best practices, we do see that 100 meters is the most common notification distance. That council meeting on the 25th, Councillor Ward did a lot of the work for this, seeing that it was 100 meters is the modal distance, with Colwood slightly below average here. Even controlling for the population density as well, we see that 100 meters is still the most common across municipalities. Staff also completed a few simulated mailouts in different areas of Colwood to get an understanding of what increasing these distances would look like in terms of the number of mailouts and residents notified. 2 subject properties were chosen for this. One is 3300 Wishart Road, where we all are right now, and 3601 Olympian Way. These 2 properties were chosen as one kind of represents a typical suburban neighborhood in Colwood, a lower population density, while 3601 Olympian Way is in a higher density neighborhood with different housing types. You have single family all the way up into multifamily. Now, with the notification distances, we did find, of course, that there was a linear increase in the number of postcards mailed out in our traditional single family neighborhood, whereas in our high density neighborhoods, we found the increase was quite a bit steeper as we increased our notification distances. Interesting caveat with this data, though, is that while there were fewer postcards mailed out in the kind of smaller single family neighborhood at 3300 Wishart, there were actually about the same amount of residents notified. This was just due to the different household size in these two neighborhoods, which makes sense. Multifamily apartment living, smaller household size, single family neighborhood, larger household size. And we found that the 100 meters was a really good medium here as well. We're having high notification while still kind of being in that neighborhood. So some of the options and alternatives today, the first one is the staff recommendation that we do increase the notification distance from 75 to 100 meters, while also having an accompanying bylaw amendment to the land use procedures bylaw to increase it from 75 to 100 meters for all public notices, regardless if it's a rezoning or development variance permit. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate that. I'll go to questions in just a moment, but I think just background, we've chatted about it informally here at the table, but for benefit of anyone viewing in future. So in late March, Councillor Jansen put forward a motion to review increasing the notification area, which I seconded and supported, and was passed unanimously by council to seek this insight and direction from staff. And procedurally, then it would come back to us at the committee here, and then ultimately, depending on the decision here, then go forward to council. So that is kind of the history in a nutshell. I will open up to any questions if anybody has any. Seeing none. Oh, we'll go to Councillor Jansen.
Thank you. It is something that has troubled me, I guess, since the last term. 100 meters, like in some context, we'll be adding, a home or two. Did we look at any other options? Like, it's fine to say that we looked at what everybody else is doing, but did we try to be a little more creative or come up with any other creative ideas, or did we discount some other wild ideas? I'd just love to know the kind of the process, Dan.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for your question. One other kind of way to notify that I looked into while still kind of adhering to the LGA was actually something that you noted during the previous council meeting, and that was actually looking at postal codes via roadways. And what we found through that is while more notifications or postcards would be delivered, it didn't solve the problem of my neighbor got a postcard. Why didn't I? Just because on the roadways, you would capture so many corner properties that would only be on that street, whereas the adjacent streets that branch off wouldn't be notified. And so while, that is something that we could look further into, it might be a bit difficult in terms of implementation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. And let me paint a scenario for you here, and I'd love your feedback. But say a large property owner. That's just, one of our major developments down by the water. And well, I mean, the beachland is split up into 8 zones. So if they decide to develop in the middle of the property at zone whatever, what does the notification process look like for that zone? Like, I mean, their property continues for, several hundred meters. And really, there's nobody that lives directly adjacent off the top of my head. What does that look like as far as planning goes?
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for the question. Definitely an interesting one. And when I started here as well, I wasn't too sure. I didn't know too much about the back end, like how the notification distances get set out. And I originally thought it was actually based on a radius from the center of the property that went out 100 meters. It's actually not true. It goes to each edge of the property and then out 100 meters. And so if you have a really large property, you're covering so much area, actually compared to some of our smaller ones. So ones along Machosen in the beachlands, these parcels are actually so large that they're encapsulating quite a few properties themselves. So it's actually pretty interesting. Yeah.
I guess my concern is, you have a significant development that has, they got 2 people, they have to knock on doors, and I get it in the middle of Royal Bay, north, south. You know, there's a lot of homes nearby and even some multi-dwelling units, so more people are going to hear. And I guess my position is, you know, more is better than less. I don't know how you cap that or what you do, but you know, in my mind, adding 25 meters to something that's already, I think, inadequate, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know where to go from here. I like the idea of something like postal codes or something like that, but then, you know, and I guess I look at you know, say one of our, how about this, Bunker Road. You know, I think there's been some property acquisition, or at least some recent sales and people heading in that direction. Conceivably, people on the neighboring street below Bunker Road, which is, I drive by it all the time. Sorry? Yeah, sure. Elizabeth Ann, or even above it is, I can't remember either. Thank you. And so presumably someone on the neighboring street might not even get notified. And that troubles me because in this era of large scale construction projects, I'd hate to think that, you know, someone that doesn't pay attention to council minutes and may not drive down that road because it's a dead end may never know that something's, you know, happening behind them, or, you know, that's an example. And I'm sure that you guys discuss these things all the time, but if we did the minimum, the people on the neighboring street might never hear about the whole process. Is that fair? I mean, I'd love your 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I think that's like a very fair concern. We want to be as open and transparent as possible with these things. One place that I do direct community members is online. We do have these postings up online, so everyone who has access to the internet can see this. But of course, not everyone does have access to the internet. And one possible solution is we can look at the number of postcards that would be sent out, the properties notified when we're pulling this data. And we can say, hey, if X amount of people aren't being notified, we can double our distance or something like that as a possible solution, just to ensure that those that we want.
Is this hard and fast or a fast rule, or is this contextual? Like, I mean, are you guys interpreting this in a very, you know, hard and fast position? So 75 meters, and no, that house is 76, so forget it. Like, I mean, is it paint the picture for me, if you will?
Yeah, so what we do include is if any part of that notification distance even graces the property, they're included. And so everyone who's touching or within that radius gets included. But that's it. So it is a hard cutoff at that point.
Is there anyone else doing anything really interesting in this space that you guys are aware of?
Unfortunately, not that I'm aware of. I wish there was. Might be pretty cool. But,
I'm flogging the horse, shall we say here. And this process doesn't cost the community, right? This is at the cost of the developer. Am I correct in that?
So the cost of the postcards is borne by the community. The idea is that hopefully some of those costs would be recouped through the process of for the fees for development. But the more postcards we sent out, the more cost. I will say though, with our Tempest rollout that we have had, it has reduced the amount of staff time for these postcard mailouts significantly.
And you know, that's about it. I'll finish by just saying, you know, if everybody's comfortable with 100, I'm not going to rock that boat. I just feel like this is an area where we could excel rather than keep up at the Joneses. And you know, I'd love to see what 250 meters looks like, or 500 meters. And I'll yield, Mr. Chair, but I would love another whack at this before we finish. Thanks.
Sure, I'll go to Mr. Perry here.
I really like that, yeah, at the bare minimum, we're adhering to what is appearing to be common practice. I think it's a good thing to keep in place to play the idea around a little from Councillor Jansen. I think that there's other ideas that could complement, not necessarily replace, what we're seeing in front of us today. Things like additional signage at high traffic intersections, and then since this is happening at the development application phase, you have a relative idea of density, and so having that radius fluctuate based on the density of the application and therefore the significance of the impact that that development represents is also something that could be considered. I don't have a strong stake in the sand there, but since you wanted to spitball some ideas, that's kind of what I'm willing to throw out.
I have a question. So what's the minimum that you've ever sent? Like based on like the comments that Councillor Jansen's made and his concerns, like what's the minimum you've sent out? Like if you're always using, I like that you're using the huge, like the large border of the property, no matter where the development lands, but do you have that number?
Not off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Like even like an estimate, like maybe you've had a development and been like, oh, we only have to send out 4 postcards. Like,
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
haven't done one of the 4 myself. Maybe between 10 and 20. I'm thinking of just stacking my
Okay.
hand, you know. Yeah.
I like the idea of having like a minimum amount of notifications that have to go out. So it's like you start with the 100 meters. And then if that meets that criteria, then you're good. But if it doesn't, similar to like you made that suggestion that if it wasn't enough people, you would double it. But it's like maybe we need a minimum of 200 people notified and we just keep going until we hit that number. And if it meets that number right off the hop, but I don't know what the averages are. That's why I'm curious. Like if the average amount of postcards is 200 and only on occasion we hit that 20, it's just like, well, we need to keep expanding till we hit that 200. Because I appreciate that you guys have like policies and you probably like just follow these rules. Like we go 100 meters and if it touches it, we send it. If we don't, they don't, right? So that could be a possible criteria that we could use that would, without having to, you know, beat it to death. Just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Councillor Jan.
Thank you. I'll put some finish on this, Mr. Chair, so we don't beat this up too much. And then I'm going to make a suggestion. There's lots of good stuff here. You know, in the end, I'm probably fine with 100 meters, but it troubles me to think that, you know, we start canvassing a street or mailing out on a street and then we stop. What about the rest of the street? I mean, should they know? Maybe. I don't know. So, and I understand as well that some of this is contextual. It could be natural, you know, for something down in Royal Bay. Well, hundreds of people are going to get notified and, you know, it's a no-brainer. And everybody in the area has to drive by it and they're going to see the sign. I get it. I love the idea about, you know, I get we have minimum sign standards. How about, again, going above and beyond? You know, I was just thinking, well, you said that, Mr. Perry, that, you know, realtors put up arrows to go to their sign, you know. I mean, that's a basic example, but I don't think it would be a terrible idea to say, you know, something on Machosen Road to say there's a development going in over here, and then post the sign on Daniel Place like it's been there forever. Sorry, that's a poor example, but so I think there's a lot of creativity that could be had in this here, and whether a simple radius, it probably works, but again, some language about, okay, but when I look at the planning map and I realize, hang on, there's 4 more houses on that street, that the flexibility, I'm sure it's happening, you know, but some language in here that isn't hard and fast, that specifies, you know, to the satisfaction of the planner, that we will notify, you know, continue to notify the rest of the street. Or we've decided that why don't we just do those 2 postal codes? And it gives us the same desired outcome. Mari, go ahead. Sorry, have a piece of me.
No problem. Yeah, no, thank you so much for the discussion. So I think adding some sort of language to formalize that staff can have discretion, whether it's a street that's being notified and 2 of the 4 houses are included within the proximity distance, and then staff just use their discretion to include those 2. We certainly can add some language into the bylaw. I'd also like to add that in 2025, we are proposing to bring the updated land use applications procedures bylaw. So some of the other processes that you're discussing, like signage, can be considered during that overall update to the land use applications procedures bylaw. So that's just something to think about. I think that this just really came from the motion that Councillor Jansen brought up, that we wanted to update this immediately, but some of those other factors can be updated in 2025. And then just other things to mention, I think just in terms of best practices, having a standard notification distance is probably the easiest to be clear and transparent to the public about what our notification process is, not having conditions that make it a little bit more convoluted and complicated for the public to understand what their expectations should be around notifications. So certainly, if you want to increase the notification from 100, we can certainly look into that. There may also be another opportunity to do that when we do the overall update to the land use applications procedures bylaws. So my suggestion would be to stick with an actual radius, not conditions, but we can certainly look into increasing that if you're not comfortable with the 100.
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest, Mr. Chair, is there's enough here. In the end, I'll probably be fine with suggested radius, but I would love to see us sitting in this chair, Mari. I've never once heard someone complain that they were notified, but I've heard lots of complaints that they had no idea. I do put the filter on and accept that some people do need to find a level of engagement with their community. I accept that, but we are looking to do things, faster, better, stronger. Let's improve our process. And that's what I was looking to try and achieve here. And I get 2025, that's great. I'm still waiting for our OCP to be redone, which was in 2023. So I don't put a lot of stock in waiting to 2025 is my point. Some of the bigger portions of that, then yes, I think we can wait. But in the meantime, I'd love to see a little bit more creativity and some language that offers the ability for a planner to, blanket a neighborhood and be fulsome about it. I'm going to make a motion.
May I interrupt just for a moment, Councillor Jansen? I think I know where you're heading, but I wanted to just put something out there before you did that. I'll go right back to you. I just, I understand what, where you're coming from on it, and I don't disagree at all. I think that's right. I've never heard anybody complain that, that I was notified about something happening. It's always the opposite. But in the interest of making it workable for staff, actually, if we could put the motion back up there for a moment. Often it's the intent of a bylaw is what staff is looking at. And there is an element of interpretation in almost anything. You can only be so granular, right? It's the spirit of the law, even in the legal side of the realm, that matters, not only the intent of the law. So what I'm thinking is, and I don't know if it's the same as you, but I'm thinking if you were to get away from the specific, right now it says notification distances are 75 meters, period. And then it says we want to change that to 100 meters. If you were simply to say from 75 meters to a minimum of 100 meters, you open up the door to the discretion of staff to do that. It's only prescribing a minimum. So there can be unique scenarios. There can be discussion with council. There can be discussion by staff in unique scenarios where they recognize that 100 meters would be insufficient. They would have that latitude to do that. I think the interpretation of the bylaw is key, and Amar, you can correct me if you don't think that's possible, but I think it creates an opening without getting too granular and providing an amendment. Because I'm as you were talking, thinking of different scenarios, it gets pretty complex. Beachlands versus North Victoria versus, in Olympic View, even somebody with just a really large subdivided parcel, you can't go by the owner. And if you go by numbers of people, well, what if it's a really rural area and it spreads out? I mean, we could create a pretty formulaic table that would, cover this table. So That's my thought. That's not a formal motion because you were ahead of me and I promised to go back to you, but that's my thinking on it.
So I appreciate all that, and I'm sure there's some wording in here, but rather than us sit here and beat this up, I was gonna suggest that there's a lot of ideas that came forward from the table from, I think, all parties, and I would make the motion that we would refer this to a future meeting and just see what comes back and give our planning staff a chance to work on this. That would be my motion. Refer to a future date, TBA.
I don't believe in committee you need a seconder. Do you not?
Don't.
I don't think so. Okay, so that is the motion put forward by Councillor Jansen. I'll go to Mr. Perry.
Not against that idea whatsoever, but if we are asking staff to revisit it, and also understanding that it's the community's responsibility and price to bear in the notification process, I would like to make sure that the recommendation or the ask of staff moving forward, when bringing something back, is to evaluate and understand what their process would look like to determine these numbers, and that sort of additional cost that we could be introducing to make sure that a new path forward, while ideal for community engagement, isn't prohibitively expensive due to process and time spent evaluating appropriate range.
Sorry, I think, Mr. Chair, I think a motion to refer concludes discussion other than a referral date. The corporate officer might correct me on that. That's from my memory. And I do hear you, Mr. Perry. I think that's great.
Well, we wait for Marcy on that.
Referring it to a few, I think we've made our points, several of them. I don't think we need to flog that any further. I just ask that some of those ideas get flushed out and the planning staff report back at a future zoning and planning meeting to be confirmed. I don't think we need to put an actual date on that. We can just add it to an agenda somewhere in the next month or two, I'm sure.
So while we wait for Marcy to type that up, I'll just say that I will oppose the motion. I believe it's an unnecessary amount of work pushed back onto staff to essentially, like, we're marching towards 2025, as we heard already. I've seen too many things at the council table just drag on in perpetuity. I'm almost 2 years in, and half the things I thought we'd get done have barely started. So to me, this was a 10-minute item that I think could be resolved pretty quickly. So I will be opposing that.
My apologies. Are you looking for direction on the motion to refer?
No, I think the motion is just to refer, if I'm correct, Councillor Jansen, the motion is just to refer to staff to come back at a later date with a proposal that reflects unique properties and circumstances, or something along those lines. I don't know, perhaps you want to try to word it. I don't know what the goal is.
I think our staff get the nature of our discussion. I don't think we need to give a whole bunch of specificity. I'm sure they're capable. I'm looking for something with a little bit more meat on the bone to come back to a future meeting. So a simple referral back to staff for a future, to be scheduled for a future meeting, future zoning and planning meeting. I don't think we need to get overly specific. My 2 cents. Thank you.
Is there an understanding of what the objective is from staff, just to be clear?
Yeah, from my understanding, it would be to investigate other options for notification beyond kind of a hard and fast distance. This could be looking at minimum number of residents notified, looking at postal codes, capturing full streets, so on and so forth.
Great, that covers it. Okay, well, I will, sorry, did someone else, you wanted to speak? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to add to Daniel's point, I just wanted to clarify the intent of this particular notification aspect of an application. You know, this is to inform direct neighbors of an application. And there are a number of other ways that people can be informed about applications. So we can certainly look at more creative ways. Obviously, this is a direction from the Local Government Act that we are required to do this. So I know certainly in Daniel's review of other municipalities, not to say it's not the right thing to do, but I don't think many other municipalities have any creative ways to do it. I know Daniel certainly reviewed other municipalities on the island as well. So yeah, just to add that.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, if there's any other questions, James?
Yeah.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah. What prevents us from adopting the 100-meter recommendation as well as ask for, to the previous point, if there's other processes in play as part of operating the city that puts signage in front of the people and makes the general public more readily available or aware of a development that could impact them, that's ultimately the nature of the conversation as it got steered. And so if we could still make a step forward today through adopting the recommendation, as well as revisit how we engage the broader public of the city of Colwood, I think that would be the best way forward today.
Thank you. And I like what I've heard, and actually I concur. So if you promise to come back to me afterwards, I'm going to withdraw my motion at this time and go ahead and carry on.
Okay, so the motion is withdrawn. I will go back to Councillor Jansen, who I believe has something else to add. Nothing that hasn't been said. So just for clarity, with that motion withdrawn, we're back to the original motion. Well, I did not make a motion, so that was just a thought. It's not formalized. So if there's a new motion, I will. You want to make a motion? Okay. The motion as it's written, because this doesn't include your looking for more. Okay, so the motion as written, this is to just increase it to a minimum of 100 meters. Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay. Councillor Jansen.
Of course you do.
Councillor Jansen.
All right, sorry, and I hate, but I'm sure we can do this quickly. I would ask that staff, in addition to this motion, come back with some suggested language and how we can append to this and make it even better to speak to some of those situations that we've discussed here. So thank you, Daniel, for this up till now. And then I guess we're asking for I'm asking just for a little bit more. I can make it concise for you, Marcy, but my motion would be that planning staff return with additional methods of notifying the community of rezoning applications or what have you. Someone help me out here. Does that?
Does it have to be rezoning, like any sort of, this one costs a development application?
Yeah, sorry, a development application, or help me out, Daniel. What would make sense?
Yeah, an application requiring public notice.
An application requiring public notice. Thank you. Sorry, Marcy. Does that work? I'm open to
Yeah,
suggestions.
so this
or
would be a
amendments.
second recommendation. They are two separate recommendations, correct? This first has been voted on. Yeah. Okay, that seems pretty straightforward to me. Okay, I'll call.
I believe Mari has.
Just a
Sorry.
comment.
Yeah.
I'm just, I think it's pretty broad with additional methods of notifying. I don't think we're asking for additional methods. I think we just want to, staff can return with enhanced language of notifying the community. I just am hesitant to say additional methods because I don't think
Getcha.
we are adding new methods of notifying. Yeah, we just want to enhance the language that we use in the bylaw. And I also just like to add that I think the minimum of 100 meters is a good suggestion, and I think that staff can go back and use our discretion more when we are notifying, with the premise of to over notify than under. So I'm not sure if that makes you comfortable or if you would like more formalized language in the bylaw.
I would, and there's no reason why we can't start exploring this now in advance of 2025. I don't think this isn't a stretch from where we're at already. So I don't think there's a ton of work or expense involved. Just lots of good ideas have been mentioned here, and you yourselves have mentioned some language that allows for deeper engagement on the part of planning staff. So that flexibility. So we have a minimum and then we have some flexibility. I like it. I like where that's headed. So I would accept that amendment, friendly amendment from staff, Mr. Chair. And that would be my motion. Thank you.
I would just suggest, just from a grammar standpoint, that it says enhanced language to notify versus of notifying, which changed slightly. I just take the ing off notifying and we're good. Okay, you're satisfied? Okay, with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? There it is, passed 3-1. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I believe we are on to item 6, adjournment, moved by Councillor Jensen. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.